All right. Good to see a full house in iChat today. And I don't think I've ever seen so much props in an iChat so far. So this will be exciting. I'm given the honorable task to introduce Richard Furberg, my esteemed colleague. So apart from saying it's an honor to share the same office space, we have a lot of interesting discussions. But Richard is also an interesting background. He started his career in as a financial analyst and business manager in the oil, gas and chemical industry. Then he decided to take on the quest on exploring energy. So he went as far as earning a PhD in applied thermodynamics, and then he started to work for us at Electrolux. And I can't tell you how lucky we are for having you here. If you're lucky, you can see him bike to work on his camouflage-colored bike in lightning speed. If you're even more lucky, you can see him surfing on a surfboard or a snowboard or a skateboard. If you're unlucky, you end up behind him in the salad counter at lunch. He's piling up those veggies on the plate. Enormous quantities. Apart from that, he enjoys questions posed by his 4 children and also has a bit of mixed feelings seeing them mess up the environment, because that in the end will lead to the entropy death of universe. That's the next iChat by Richard, I presume. So it won't be the case today. But wow, let's get going.
Thank you, Mats. Thank you. Is the mic on? Can you hear me?
I'm sure it's on, but we can do something.
It's on? Okay, there we go. Well, thank you, Mats, for that gracious introduction. So how much energy does it take to be cool? That's the one of the questions we'll try to figure out, wrap our minds around today. And also, some of you might have seen these little questions that we posed before this iChat. Like, why can't somebody invent a refrigerator that once and for all is just quiet and doesn't have any moving parts and make a lot of noise? Wouldn't that be nice? Or for instance, here are some of my great colleagues. Here's Urban, the marathon runner. Welcome, Urban, who runs to work, lives in Åkersberga, and he runs from there too sometimes. And myself, who bike to work, and then Andreas, who drives his Echo car. He lives closest to the office, but he thinks this is the best way to get to the office in terms of environmental impact, the least environmental impact. So we'll see who is right. But before we get to that, I'd like to introduce 2 master thesis students. It's the picture. We only had a black and white camera. Something went wrong with the JPEG file. But we had 2 master thesis students who did a project for us, and they invented an incredible machine. We had long discussions regarding this. We decided to reveal this today in this iChat forum, which is unusual, but we decided to do it. It's actually 90 years old. It's perfectly quiet, has no moving parts. So it's already been invented. Electrolux acquired the rights to this patent from these 2 students, 1925, and they were paid $2 million in today's value. It's a lot of money, plus a couple of cents for every units they sold. And this was really a world revolution. I mean, there were a number of news articles in Swedish news and international press, because they saw the problem that even Einstein himself had been working on, to create the refrigerator without any moving parts. And I was thinking today we're gonna do a couple of little tests and experiments to see if this is possible. Is it possible to make ice just out of heat? So I brought this kind of large size cigarette lighter. It's actually powered by the same gas as what you have in a cigarette lighter. And here we have this system is 90 years old. This one is equivalent, a little smaller in size, was produced perhaps 15 years ago. They're still produced today, sold over the world. Electrolux divested of the company that make these absorption coolers about 15 years ago, I think. And the big market is RVs and campers, and hotel coolers are often cooled by these absorption coolers because they're so quiet. The nice thing in RV is you might not have access to electricity, but you might have gas you can burn, gas bottles, propane or something along those lines. So you heat a part of this refrigeration system, and we'll see if it works. It might take some time, but we'll see if this invention is still valid today. So as I said, this was a revolution. I mean, before this time, this is how people got their cooling, right? Ice was harvested here in Stockholm, I mean, all over the world. This was big business too. Blocks of ice were shipped to India, for instance, where well-to-do people can get some ice to cool down their drinks. And this is how an old refrigerator could look like. You basically put your chunk of ice in here, put some sawdust on it to make sure to improve the insulation, and then you had your cool compartment here. This is a pretty nice refrigerator, and perhaps something we should take up again. So these guys obviously were very successful. Balthasar von Platen, he only stayed with Electrolux for a year, went on to become one of the greatest inventors in Sweden's history. And Carl Munters stayed for, I think, about 10 years, and also went on, entrepreneurial as he was, and he had more than almost 1,000 patents personally. So these are really two of the greatest geniuses that Sweden has produced. I like his pose, by the way. Carl Munters there, kind of the Napoleon pose. Balthasar von Platen, he got a patent on a perpetuum mobile in the US. It was declined in Sweden. So I'll get back to that. But what is why aren't we using these systems today? I mean, because now in these refrigerators, in a modern refrigerator, we use a gas compression technology, and because this is noiseless, it's quiet, and it's very robust. You can find systems like this that have been operating for 50, 60, 70 years, and they still work perfectly fine. And the reason for that is energy efficiency. These units, with all their benefits, they consume quite a bit of energy. And that leads me into, again, the question, how much energy do we need to keep cool? But before we go a little bit deeper into the world of energy, you can't come to a chat like this and not learn the laws of thermodynamics. Have you all heard of the laws of thermodynamics? Most of you probably have. Some of you might know what they are. Crash course, 1 minute. The first law is that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred or converted. The second law is that heat always goes from hot to cold. Or another way of phrasing it, which is, here it gets a little difficult, is that there are always losses. All systems have losses. And in reality, typically in the form of friction. The third law is it's not okay, which means you can never get to 0 Kelvin, which is the lowest temperature there is, when all the molecules stop moving, stop having any energy. And you can actually never get there. It would take an infinite amount of energy to cool something down to 0 Kelvin, which is equivalent of minus 273 degrees Celsius. Unfortunately, you can't get there. Once these third laws were established, a couple of decades later, they realized, hey, we need to define temperature also, because otherwise none of this really makes good sense. So that's the 0th law. There is such a thing as temperature. So those are the laws of thermodynamics. And here I have a little nice machine that I think can illustrate these laws. It just rotates from the heat of my hand. And it's a Stirling engine. These have been around for about 200 years. And it's extremely efficient. It takes heat from my hand and converts it into work. Great illustration of the first law. Energy cannot be destroyed. It can be converted. But what happens now, once this work is being done, you see this rotating wheel. What does it do for us? We're not lifting any weights. We're not performing anything else other than really it's just converted back into friction losses in the form of heat. The second law of thermodynamics, you always have losses. So we have the indestructibility of energy and the conversion of it. It's a great heat engine. These actually some of the lead competence in the world for these Stirling engines is here in Sweden. They're used in, among other things, they're used in submarines because they're very quiet. You don't have any explosions. There's no combustion process. And they're also used in some solar power applications. Actually, the world record in solar power efficiency has been set in Phoenix, Arizona by one of these. You have this parabolic mirror that concentrates sunlight into a point, and at that point you have one of those Stirling engines. It spins and generates electricity. I think they achieve about over 30% efficiency. So it's an amazing machine, invented by a Scottish minister, by the way, 200 years ago. So let's go back to energy. Now we know the law of thermodynamics. This thing is actually spinning even closer, even faster now. And energy appliances. We work with food preservation, refrigerators, and some of you might have seen these labels that started being introduced in the early mid-90s that would help the consumer know how efficient their refrigerator is, or other appliances for that matter. It's used for dishwashers and other appliances, and give them a number, rough ballpark number as to how much energy they consume. And these levels here over the years have been tightened and tightened, so we have to work hard to meet them, to make our appliances more and more efficient. And if we look at in Europe, where this began, in the 1990s, the average refrigerator had roughly like an E label sold in the market, and had an energy index, so a measure of how efficient it was, at around 125 degrees. And 125 in index. But over the years, we'll see that we've had a dramatic improvement. We've gone from your average refrigerator being up here, this consumption level, down to now, they ran out of letters a couple of years ago, so now they're called A+, double plus, and triple plus, because it was hard to go kind of below A. And now we're looking at our average refrigerator we sell is down at this level, somewhere around between A+ and A double plus. And this is a 70% improvement. So it's huge. And this particular one, refrigerator that I brought up here today, doesn't look like much to the outside, but this is what we call a technology carrier. And this has the most advanced technology we can produce today in food preservation. I was thinking of saying a few words about what we have done. This actually has a label. We started off with an A+ model, and now it's at A triple plus minus 45%. The target was 50. We didn't quite reach there. And so what have we done? Well, we've used a cooling system that we've developed and will hopefully go into production by the end of this year. That is very energy efficient. This particular refrigerator is full of these things. Does anyone know what this is? Vacuum insulation panel. So it's a filler material encased in an aluminum barrier casing, and it's been evacuated. So it's kind of like a thermos. It's vacuum in here, so has very good insulation properties. So these this refrigerator is full of these vacuum insulation panels. And if you buy a triple plus model today, there is a chance you'll have a couple of these, perhaps sitting inside the door, and perhaps on the side, perhaps even in the back. This one I think even has one in the top, if I remember correctly. So we work with cooling systems, insulation materials, try to find every loss possible, try to eliminate them. And to do so, we work a lot with virtual simulations, so computer simulations of systems. So when we build a refrigerator like this, we had calculated everything on this one, which compressor to use, which insulation thickness to use, how many of these vacuum panels, what type of vacuum panels, etc., to achieve the right performance. And the idea is really to the more work we can do virtually on a computer, where we can run obviously a lot of tests, virtual tests, the less work we need to do in the laboratory, which is very time consuming and costly. So it has a big impact on the time to market with new products. And at the end of the day, it's also about, of course, reducing cost and maximizing our profitability. So when we make investments into new architectures of refrigerators, we want to make smart decisions. And the easiest thing to do is to do that on paper first, or on the computer first. So energy is highly connected, as many of you know, to the environment, to the greenhouse effect. And so let's go back to this question. I was thinking, to make it fair now, so who's doing the environment a favor? If you think Urban is doing the right thing, running to work, you can raise one hand. If you think I'm doing the right thing, you can raise two hands. And if you think Andreas is doing the right thing, you can stand up. So let's take a vote. 1, 2, 3. I see a lot of two hands up in the air. And you guys are standing up there. It's just because you don't have any chairs, or? I'm sorry, Andreas, but it seems like you don't have the majority on your side. One way of tackling a question like this is to look at everything we do. When we move energy, it has some consequence for the environment, and we need energy to move. Energy cannot be destroyed, so we need to take in energy in order to power ourselves to move. So this is 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide. Most of you probably know the carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, and this is actually the right size, 1 kilogram. How far do you get with 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide in terms of polluting contributing to the greenhouse effect? Well, if Urban and I were meat eaters, and obviously Andreas in his Eco car is powered by gasoline, we'd get about this far. About 500 meters, Urban. It doesn't take you all the way from Åkersberga to the office. I get 1.5 kilometers, not quite enough for me. And Andreas, he gets to work, right? You have about 10 kilometers, perhaps even less. He'll get to work, so I think you're doing quite well. But then somebody said, hey, what if we just drank milk instead? I mean, why is meat so bad? Well, it takes a lot of energy to feed up for beef production. What if we drink milk? Urban gets further. I get even. Actually, now I beat Andreas on my bike. And well, if you get behind me in the salad bar, as Mats indicated, eating carrots, then we're both beating Andreas. And because eating plant-based food directly, instead of having that energy being converted into muscle in a cow, where we have losses, right? Second law of thermodynamics, losses in every step, then you will get further. You have a more efficient way of transporting yourself. So our climate impact is to a large extent determined by what we eat and how we move around. And by the way, is now triple plus minus 45, is that a lot of energy or little? It's actually, we measure this, it's even a little bit less than this lamp here. So if you buy a modern triple plus refrigerator, and this is a fairly large one, it's a 70 centimeter wide, so it's a large volume and not much insulation actually. So this is the energy it consumes, about this lamp here. Very efficient. I was thinking of moving this machine. I think it rotates clockwise. What happens if we put it on a cold plate? So one kilogram of beef, it didn't quite want to start going, right? There you go. consider the climate impact from 1 kilogram of beef. And if you were to get a triple plus cooler and operate it in Sweden, where we have fairly clean energy, for how long time would, to have an equivalency between the greenhouse effect from this fridge and the beef production, how long time do you think you would have to run this fridge? Hours? How many believe hours? How many believe days? Days, probably. Probably days. Well, in Sweden, you're looking at 18 years for 1 kilogram of beef. Triple plus refrigerator. So actually, if you were to buy a refrigerator like this, and your only purpose throughout its entire lifetime would be to reduce waste, food waste, 10 kilograms of beef over its entire lifetime, it would make sense. You would do the environment a favor. In Sweden, that is. And that even includes the production of this refrigerator. So what conclusions can we draw from this? Well, don't waste food is a major one. What you eat is up to you. And but for us in advanced development, this actually also has implications on how we store food. How can we make this refrigerator enhance the taste and texture of our food, improve the longevity of the food, make sure we don't get freezer burns when we store in the freezer, so when you bring it out a couple of months later, it'll still be good to use. These are the type of questions that we ask ourselves, and then we use different type of technologies, temperature control, humidity control to try to achieve these goals. Part of it is to make the food more presentable and better for the user, but also in a holistic view, this is the best thing we can do for our climate. We have two labs here in this building on the third floor, for those who didn't know that. We both do a lot of energy testing and also food testing. We have a new food lab that's run by Urban and his team. This is my oldest son, Theodore, who, like his geeky dad, likes to play chess. And he asks a lot of great questions. So the other week he came out of the shower and he said, "Dad, I don't understand. I'm in the bathroom and I'm warm. I step into the shower and the water's warm and I'm warm. And I step out of the shower and I get cold. Why is that?" And of course I didn't give him my 1,000-page book of thermodynamics and said, "Oh, read this, son, this is great. Great question." But really it's a great question, because actually what happened to him when he experienced that, being cold, stepping out of the shower, it's actually how a refrigerator works. So I was gonna try to explain that. Again, you can't listen to a talk like this and have these great inventions displayed and not know how a typical refrigerator works like. So I'm gonna need two volunteers. How about you? Would you like to come up? And how about you? And here we have a thermos.
Are you in short?
We have a thermos with hot water. And if you stand on this side and you on that side. So here we have a reservoir of heat, let us say. And we have two copper pipes, kind of similar to the copper, and they look about the same as the copper tubing that's, now we use mostly aluminum tubing, but copper tubing inside our fridges. And let's kind of see how well heat is transferred from this bucket of hot water to the top of this pipe. So take a firm grip, top of the pipe, and at 3 you both stick in each end into this bucket. And then let me know what you feel. So 1, 2, 3. So it's hot down here. Their hands are cooler, I can guarantee you, than the water in this thermos. So what do you feel?
It's getting hot.
Is it getting hot?
Yeah.
What do you feel?
Not that much.
Nothing? You can't hold it anymore? No. But you're fine?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really hot. So what's going on here? Thank you so much. Thanks. you can just leave it here. I'll take care of it. Thanks. There we go. So what's going on here? Is it? I was gonna say, what's your name again?
Andres.
Andres. Is he just more sensitive than the lady here?
Absolutely.
A sensitive man. That's good. Does anyone have any theory as to what was going on? This is copper. This is, other than diamond, this is the most heat-conductive material known to man. It's very heat-conductive. It's 20 times better than steel. Does anyone know what was going on here?
Body temperature.
The temperature was the same temperature at the bottom. The body temperature, so you're saying one of them is hotter or cooler? Oh, yeah, man or woman, okay. Any other theory?
What's in the pipe?
What's in the pipe? There's got to be something in the pipe. So what's in the pipe? What's in the pipe? Do you know what's in the pipe? There's a refrigerant. It could be water, actually. It could be any fluid that when you stick, if you have a bit of fluid inside this pipe and you stick it into the hot water, this fluid starts to boil. Gas rises, and when it reaches the hand of Andres, it condensates. And when something condensates, it gives off heat. So now you transport heat from the liquid into gas into his hand, going from hot to cold, transporting heat. Again, in agreement with the second law of thermodynamics, right? Heat goes from hot to cold. And this is really what, in this particular pipe, we have R600, isobutane, the same gas I'm burning here, same gas as in a cigarette lighter fluid, same gas that's in this refrigerator. That gas is what we filled up this tube with. And in the US primarily, we use another gas called R134A. And that's also nice, has nice properties for refrigeration, but there's one major drawback, and that is that it has very high global warming potential, which means if this gas is released, it's actually the right volume of what you find in a refrigerator for a gas. The right volume. If this gas is released out of this balloon here, it's equivalent of 200 of these balloons. So imagine 200 kilograms of CO2. Or roughly, if you have an eco car, same as driving to the southern tip of Sweden and back. Just one refrigerator. So this is a huge environmental problem with leaking cooling systems. So your air conditioner in your car is filled with this refrigerant. And if you ever have a leakage on your AC system, you go in and they fill it up, roughly 1 kilogram. That's like driving halfway around the world. Just that leakage. And from the numbers I find, roughly 20% of all the greenhouse gases emitted, and it comes from hydrofluorocarbons. So it's a huge problem. So between leaking refrigerants and food production, which according to the United Nations latest climate summit, food production might account for 50% of all the greenhouse gas emissions in the world. You're covering really, those are some of the two biggest chunks of climate impact that we have as humans. So, to conclude, let me just cover up this hot water here so nobody steps on it later. By the way, there was one component I didn't tell you about. When you have this liquid boiling down here, condensing up here, what we do, we put a compressor in between. So put a compressor in between here that lowers the pressure here. When you lower the pressure of a liquid, it boils at a lower temperature. So for instance, if you boil water at the top of Mount Everest, it will boil not at 100 degrees, but perhaps at 70 degrees. So that's how we create a low pressure here to get the temperature down to, for instance, in a freezer, minus 18 degrees. And the liquid that condenses up here, we just lead that back through a thin tube into the bottom again. And that's your refrigerator. Very simple, but very, very effective technology. A small compressor, really small one, looks like this. This would be enough to power a refrigerator today. This is a little noisy, so we don't use this one. The ones we use are a little larger, but that's about what you need. So to conclude, what's the future of cooling technology? My job is to find out, but I don't really know, to be honest. But there's one thing we're looking at, among others, called magnetocaloric refrigeration, which is an effect that's been known for about 100 years, where there are materials that when they come in contact with the magnetic field, they heat up. When you take them out of the magnetic field, they cool down. And this technology doesn't use any of these gases, and has potential of being 20-30% more energy efficient than the best we can make today. So this is something we are looking into, and we work together with the Royal Institute of Technology here in Stockholm, where these two guys actually invented the absorption machine, Platen and Munters. Here's Besa, the PhD student we support and work with. And right now, I was hoping to show you a machine, a working machine, which would be the first one in Sweden, probably in Northern Europe, but we're not quite there yet. It didn't work yet. So who knows? This might be the future for us. By the way, I can see now. Do you see here? Frost buildup on this absorption cooler. So this tube here would be inside your refrigerated box. You see, this is cold. So you're welcome after if you want to come up and feel and explore some of these gadgets here. So never underestimate the creativity of students. Learn the laws of thermodynamics. Eat carrots and don't waste food. Bike to work. And the future may be discovered in the past, with a reference to magnetocalorics and how new laws, new phenomena of nature are not discovered very often. But very often old phenomena can become, or laws can become relevant because of change in new materials or new technologies that make it possible to use old technologies again. That was it for me. Keep on asking questions, and you're very welcome to ask questions now and also stay after. Thank you. And just one, if you come up after, just be careful, there's a flame here, an open flame. That's the only thing you need to worry about. And we have a fire extinguisher here.
How much is the R600 corresponding to?
R600 corresponds roughly 3 times its volume here, or weight. So think of 3 of these balloons, which is probably about 20% of this, so about 200 grams of CO2. So equivalent, much less, thousands times less, yeah. It has a global warming potential, I think, of 3, and R134A has 1,300, I think, yeah. So it's a very benign gas for the global warming perspective. Yeah.
Just a really quick question. What is the name of this future cooling technology that you're working with KTH on?
This one?
No, you were talking about...
Magnetocaloric.
Magnetocaloric,
yes.
Okay.
You can Google it.
Anybody else has any questions? Yes?
Here comes a hard one.
What is shown on energy labeling in Europe and around the world refers to a strict standard measurement about how we measure energy. Real life is different. Are we taking action with technology to explain consumers how they can use the appliances in more efficient ways?
Are we doing, so the question, what are we doing to help the consumer use the appliance more efficiently? I don't know if we do a whole lot on that. How to help them use it more efficiency. I mean, most of the things we try to implement to make the appliance as intelligent as possible in its control. so it adapts to if you open doors, etc. But there's no other than your general common sense. Don't leave the door open, for 24 hours, or right as after you've been shopping, put the food right in there quickly before it gets too warm. There's nothing I can think. I don't know if anyone else in our group has anything comes to mind.
It seems like if we can help them reduce waste, it will be much more efficient.
It would be much more efficient. Absolutely, and that's a little bit of my message. I mean, I'm now taking the reference I'm using is triple plus, so the best appliance we have. I'm using energy from Sweden, which is very clean. But even if you take these numbers, 18 years of refrigerator, 1 kilogram of beef, even if you take that divided by 10, it's still staggering. So yeah, that's if you want to have a real impact on the environment. That's where you should work on and help consumers.
Is it a little bit of a design issue, you could say, to encourage the user to use our products the best way, to sort of guide them to choose the best programs or choose the right setting on the refrigerator? I mean, instead of automatically going to -25 or minus, you know what I mean? So we guide them is to press this white button instead of that white button. Yeah. So they get feedback like how much energy they are using.
That's a possible way. That's one way that could be done. Actually, one thing I am thinking about now when you say that, Adam, is you see more and more refrigerators, or we are seeing refrigerators with various temperature zones. Because perhaps we don't need to keep this at -5 or -3 the entire refrigerator. Perhaps we don't have to keep it -18 all of it. Perhaps it might even be beneficial to keep some things a little warmer, save some energy there. So you can, as a consumer, have an impact on how you use it. Yes.
What about showing the watt hours?
What hours?
Watt hours. Just show them it's how much energy it's actually using. And
you mean live as you're using it, displaying it? Yeah, that's a possibility. We're a little reluctant to do that because there's so many varying factors. How this refrigerator is built into your kitchen, how much you use it. So you might you do that in cars though, but you might get a lot of phone calls from upset people for a zillion reasons that their appliance consumes more than they thought. So yeah.
Any more questions?
No?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.